Hi guys, Derek here again. I've had a bit of interest in this tabletop tandoori. Quite a few people have asked me how you put it together, so I'm about to show you. Not rocket science again. You do need a couple of special tools really to do it. I think you would probably cut the pots with a hacksaw if you were careful, but to be honest, what you really want to be using is an angle grinder, and you can see I'm using a stone cutting disc in there. I guess you could use one of the fibre type discs, but I find the diamond disc works very well. When you cut the pots, take your time. Don't try and go through all in one go and mark it. You don't want to be guessing that at all. What I've done is I've cut one large pot like that, and I've cut one small pot like that, and I've got two the same which are intact and I've not touched yet. A bit later on I'm going to drill the holes in the bottom to improve the airflow in those. What is important, the size isn't particularly important as far as the height's concerned, but what is important is that when you take one of these smaller pots, it will go through the bigger pot like that. So now I've changed to a flap wheel and taken the stone cutter out, and what we're going to do with the flap wheel, we're just going to tidy the edges up on this. You can see they're not completely smooth, so it'll sort those out, and if you've got any imperfections in height, it'll take that out as well. So my next step is to drill some holes using a masonry bit there. In fact, it'll focus on it, nice new sharp one, and you'll notice we've got a hammer off in this case. Right, so I've drilled 3 holes in the offcut lid. That's the offcut off the small pot, obviously. We've marked this one accordingly, and the idea is we want those holes to coincide. So if you've got it right, you should have one of those, you should have one of those, one of those, one of those, and one of those, and it's going to go together like this. That one is in there, like that. That one goes on top, and obviously those holes are going to line up and coincide. Oops, that was a close one. That one goes on there like that, and that goes on there like that. And if you've got it right, that should be just a fraction below this ledge. So now it's time to start putting things together, and to do that we're going to use this stuff. Now I've got this from Screwfix. I've got 2 kilograms for £4.99. That's probably the cheapest that I've managed to find around. If you have a look at the label on the back, there's a few warnings there. It looks like you should really be wearing gloves while you're using it. It says that it might affect your skin a bit. Once it's cured, I don't think it's going to do you any harm, but we're not going to actually put any on the inside of the cooking surfaces. We're only going to put it where it won't touch your food, if you like. So we're going to start using this in a second. What we are going to do before we stick any of this together, we're going to give every edge that we're going to be using this cement a nice coat of water, make sure it's nice and damp. So water, you can see I'll put a smear of the clay around there, and all we're going to do is put that on there. We're going to give it a good push down, and then we're going to wipe off any that appears on the inside there with a damp cloth. So you should end up with something that looks like this. You see I've got the top glued on there. Make sure those holes coincide and line up. I'm going to handle it very gently until it's dry. In fact, you'd best not handle it at all at this point. But you see inside there, I've given it a good wipe round with a damp rag. In fact, I've used a kitchen scourer for that. That works quite well because it gets the gritty nature of the clay off. Inside there, I've built up a layer around there to make a nice strong joint, and again I've given the outside around there a wipe with some damp rag or something to get it all nice and clean. So before I go and put that inside the other pot, that one I'm going to give it a good half an hour or more to harden off a bit in the sun. And finally I'll put a smear of that around there. I'm just going to moisten things slightly there to help it stick. A little bit around the bottom, and obviously that's going in there next. Okay, make sure everything's fairly central, and the reason we wanted that inner one slightly lower than the outer one was because to take up the thickness of the paste that we've put in. So it should be pretty much level now when you look at it. And again, I'm going to leave that for a fair bit before I let things go off. I'll be back in about half an hour. So now we need some sort of insulation in there. Really, I think probably the best stuff you could put in would be vermiculite. But vermiculite doesn't come particularly cheap. And what I have got left over from the caravan build is a load of this stuff. Now, I've not murdered a sheep, it's actually rock wool. And it doesn't catch fire. It's important that if you're not sure about it, just put a flame to a corner of a piece of it and see if it catches. This doesn't catch at all. It does discolour, but it doesn't burn. So that's what we're going to be using in this. We've got a reasonable sized piece there, and it'll probably take most of it actually. You're not trying to pack it absolutely solid in there. You need some air gap because that's how the insulation works. But you certainly wanted to make sure that it holds everything in place in there. And just keep going until you feel it's about right. What I'm going to do to get in there and help me poke it down, you see I've got a stick, and I'm just going to do it a little piece at a time and just keep poking it in and working my way around. So we've got that all packed in nice and snug there. What I did find worked better actually was using a specially shaped stick, so you can actually get down right down to the bottom in there. And as predicted, it did take up most of that sheet. If you're struggling for a source of rock wool, it might be worth having a look in your loft, because I don't think a handful of it's going to spoil your thermal efficiency too much. But like I say, just make sure you do a fire test on it first. Anyway, the next thing we've got to do is put some more fire clay around the top there to seal it. If you've got a fairly large amount like these going in there, you could save some fire clay by putting a bit of finishing plaster or something like that in first, because it probably will crack underneath with the heat, but it won't matter because you're not going to see it and it'll still hold things in place. So there we put the one coat plaster in. I've got some going off in the shed, so I've just used that to fill it out a bit, help anchor things in place. You notice I've given myself a good lip all the way around, and that'll accept the fire clay, which we'll be putting on with the trowel. Okay, finished article more or less. This offcut we've got here, that will make a decent lid, so we can maybe use that somewhere later. Might even put a handle on the top, because you won't want to go putting your finger through when he's going, will you? The next thing to do with this is we're going to put it in a nice warm place, warm and dry, for at least 24 hours until everything's sort of dried off well. And I don't need to show you the next bit, I can just talk you through it. We just put it in an oven. We're going to start off on gas mark 1 and give it about an hour at that, and then we're going to slowly turn it up over 4 or 5, maybe even 6 hours, up until the oven is absolutely as hot as you can get it, and give it a good half an hour at least at maximum heat. And after that we can let it cool down real slow. When we've done that, we'll give it all a brush inside and out with some cooking oil, just cheap cooking oil, anything like that will do, and that will help seal it a little bit. And then we'll light it and we'll give it one run at least with charcoal in before we go putting food in it. And after that you can pretty much say the thing's finished. Don't get it wet ever. Don't use liquid firelighter in it, in case it leaches into the insulation, and then you'd end up with some sort of shrapnel bomb, possibly. And be very, very careful if you decide to make something like this. Obviously I'm not recommending you do, and I do not take any responsibility for anything nasty that happens to you because of anything to do with this video. Anyway, it's as simple as that, guys. Like I say, it's not rocket science. If you want to have a go, have a go. Let me know how you get on if you do have a go. You can probably even improve on the design. Obviously you can make it larger, considerably larger if you want to. It's up to you. Thank you for watching.